Welcome, this is Richard, and this video is going to be entitled The Purpose, the Goal, and the Cycle. Buckminster Fuller taught that you should always start with the big picture. So as you think about your role as a parent, what is it that you really want? What do you want your children to look like 1 year from today? And as you think about that, what are you going to do differently to bring about that change? You are the only change agent in this equation. In other words, anytime a parent or a person tries to get another person to change, that's called manipulation, and it's persuasion. And the point behind that is it doesn't work. You can get them to change if you physically control them, but internally it will backfire, and eventually there will be repercussions on that. You cannot really fix your kids, but you can change yourself, and by changing yourself, you will find that your children who want to please you, who want to be happy, will almost always follow along. So where do you start? Well, W. Edwards Deming said the following: "A quick fix is neither. I didn't say it would be easy. I said it would work." He said this to the Japanese when he went in after World War II to rebuild the manufacturing sector. Was he successful in what he wanted to do? You can be the judge. How does Toyota, Honda, Nissan, and Kawasaki look compared to the American versions of it, specifically as it came out of the 50s, 60s, and 70s? By the time the 80s hit, you'll see that these were taking over as the predominant manufacturers, car manufacturers and motorcycle manufacturers in the world. Here's the purpose behind the trust in parenting concepts that I am sharing with you. It is to create an environment and skill set where you can not only see how to connect with your children, but also how to connect with anybody in your circle of influence. The argument is, what good is a skill that you learn at work if it's not applicable at home in improving interpersonal relationships? This skill, the trust in parenting concepts, is transferable not only to your friends, but to your office environment. If you're in sales, it's tremendous. If you're in management or leadership, it will have an impact upon you. The goal is for you to see opportunities for growth and learning you haven't seen before. In other words, to think differently and to experience the essence of trust. What is the essence of trust? There isn't a person I've ever communicated with who hasn't nodded their head in agreement that trust is important in any relationship. But what is that essence? Can you really understand experientially the lack thereof, or therefore the existence of trust in a relationship? Here's my definition of parenthood. Parenthood is taking the responsibility for the development of your offspring from a dependent child to an independent young adult, culminating in an interdependent existence. So I'm going to go over, in this video, we're going to cover the dependent cycle. Covey wrote in his book, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, the concept of the dependent cycle, and it's in a maturity continuum. Life begins or centers some version of dependency. So at birth, that infant is completely dependent upon his or her parents, siblings, grandparents, and those associated within her realm. As she gets older, it's very, very quick that the independent cycle starts. When they hit right around 1.5 or so, they're already wanting to do things on their own. So the dependent part of things is the paradigm of you. You take care of me, you come through for me, or you didn't come through for me. I'll blame you for those results. Dependence begins at conception within the womb, and therefore it grows. And right here where you see this little toddler, 2 years old, you can see the independence starting to come out. Independence is the paradigm of I. I can do it. I'm responsible. I'm self-reliant. I can choose. The terrible twos are an introduction into independence, and the natural growth process of the body drives the young child to acquire the ability to function without dependence. And so you get into the young elementary age group. As they start growing, they don't want to hold your hand all the time. They want to be able to do things on their own. The fear of any prudent parent is the consequences that shadow increased independence, and its consequences that the child's mouth and actions cannot afford. As this young man here grows into adulthood, the necessity of independence increases. So schooling, work, and as you can see in this little picture, dating, eventually marriage and parenthood, all come with the independent part of it very necessary. But then we get to the next level, which is critical. It all culminates in what I call, or what Covey calls, interdependence. That means that the two of you can work in harmony together, where you bring the strength of an independent relationship into an interdependent relationship. Marriages that do not have that quality will always struggle. Let's say one of the partners is dependent and the other is independent. Interdependence is never possible in those things, and we're going to go over the numbers from a math standpoint in the next few videos. So in a dependent position, they start very, very young, completely reliant upon you to do everything for them. Then they start growing and that independent cycle starts. They get older, and this is why I put question marks. They want to think they are invincible. The world is theirs. They can do anything. But we know, as well as anyone else, there's still a lot to learn in that process. Ultimately, you get to a place what we call interdependence, where you rely on each other for the growth. You understand your strength, but without the other, you can't grow. This is different than codependence, which is an addiction. Interdependence is where the sum of the whole is greater than the independent parts. And this is how it works. Here's the math. Let's say I'm a builder, a construction builder, and I'm a dependent person where I'm constantly needing help from somebody else. I don't know how to do things on my own. And I decide to team up with another builder who also happens to be dependent. Well, we think, well, together we could probably do better. But what happens when we do that is because we're both so dependent, the math doesn't work. 1 + 1 = 1. Because we're dependent upon each other, we're unable to get the necessary traction for growth. Now let's combine a dependent with an independent. So this is like a marriage. Picture one of the spouses coming into the relationship completely dependent from the environment he or she grew up in. Then that person marries a very independent person. So in the construction equation, we've got a dependent person who, with a lot of help, can build one home. The independent person who knows how to do things, can do it on his own or her own, can build 2 homes. What happens when you put the two together? Well, you don't exactly get 3, because the dependent person will suck the energy out of the independent person and the time, and therefore we're right back to where we were. We'll get 1 + 2 = 1. The purpose behind this, I'm hoping you can see that as parents, when we interface with our children, how critical it is that we start teaching them very independent manners, how to do things on their own. And when we intercede, when we're constantly there rescuing them, we don't give them that ability to be independent. The trust in parenting concept is that ability for you to learn skills that allow your children to grow, but it also allows you as a person and a parent to grow. So we can get to the point of independence. The reason is that unless you become independent, you can never become interdependent. A dependent and an independent person can never achieve the highest probability of success within their marriage. So let's go to the independent math. If I have 2 independent builders, they each can build 2 houses in 1 year. Well, they work independent. They don't work together. They simply can do their own thing, and they each produce the 2, so you have the 4. So nothing changes. Now, what happens if they work together and they decide to synergistically combine their efforts and their strengths? So you've got 2 houses each, but when the end of the year comes around, you find that a fifth house was able to be built because of the synergy. And that's how the independent math works. So, putting it in just numeric equations, when two dependents work together, 1 plus 1 equals 1. When two independents get together, 1 plus 1 equals 2. And when you put it into an interdependent relationship, 1 plus 1 equals 3. Now, as I finish this video, I want to make you aware of something that's really been codified in the last 10 years, which is called codependency. And codependency is often associated with the spouse or the parents of an addict. However, we have also discovered that codependency can enter the equation of parenthood when that person was codependent as a child because of the environment he or she was raised in. It's a behavior that is passed from one generation to another, and it's also known as relationship addiction or enmeshment, because people with codependency often form or maintain relationships that are very one-sided. Now, this is emotionally destructive or abusive, and most families who turn out to be dysfunctional exhibit behaviors of codependency. And rather than go into any great detail right here, I'm just making you aware. If you feel that perhaps in your family you've got some codependency going on, here are some of the symptoms just so you can understand. The person who's codependent, happiness is completely hinging on someone else getting better, or being happy, or doing something correct, or doing something great. There's an existence of physical, emotional, sexual abuse somewhere in that relationship. There's a tendency to confuse love and pity. Boundaries are often violated, and the codependent person will rescue and enable constantly. And they tend to get hurt when others don't sufficiently recognize their efforts. Those are just a couple of symptoms of a codependent relationship. To some degree, everybody has symptoms of codependence. It's when it becomes dysfunctional and addictive, and you know when you're hurting. So in a relationship, if that's going on, then you'll need to seek either professional guidance, or there are many religions and Christian outreach programs that offer assistance for addiction and codependency in your area. You'll just need to go to the internet and look that up. And so that will conclude our discussion today of the purpose, the goal, and the dependent cycle, or the dependent cycle. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye now.